April 15th, 1945, Singing, Lower Saxony. British and Canadian troops walk into Bergen-Belsen and find tens of thousands barely alive and thousands of bodies in the mud. Typhus spreads by the hour. Food kills as quickly as hunger. The cameras don't stop. What happens to the women who ran this place? How do you find justice for industrial murder? Can a normal woman become a monster? The British Second Army liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp at 1400 hours on April 15, 1945. Colonel James Johnston counted 13,000 unburied corpses and 60,000 prisoners, most weighing under 70 pounds. Within hours, British military photographers began documenting everything. The women guards who administered daily brutality now faced cameras of their own. Irma Grace stands 5 feet 6 inches tall with blonde hair and blue eyes, 22 years old. Chief female guard at Bergen-Belsen since March 1945. Before that, Auschwitz and Ravensbrück. The British arrest her on April 17th at her quarters near the main gate. She carries a leather whip and a pistol. Her prisoners called her the hyena of Auschwitz. Elizabeth Volkenrath supervises 400 women guards across 3 camps between 1941 and 1945, Bergen-Belsen, Auschwitz-Birkenau, Ravensbrück. Age 31 at capture, responsible for selections, medical experiments, and punishment details. Her signature appears on transfer orders for 26,000 women sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Juana Bormann weighs barely 100 pounds but carries a trained attack dog everywhere. Prisoners know her as Weasel, the Weasel. She uses the dog to tear apart women who collapse during roll call. British forces find her hiding in a storage shed on April 16th. The dog is shot on sight. Bormann claims she worked in the kitchen. The War Crimes Investigation Unit arrives at Bergen-Belsen on April 23rd under Colonel Leo Genn. They interview 850 survivors over 6 weeks. Every testimony mentions the women guards. Names repeat: Grace, Volkenrath, Bormann, Herta Ehlert, Frida Walter. The British compile 400 pages of witness statements by June 1st. Lieutenant Colonel T. M. Backhouse opens the first Bergen-Belsen trial on September 17th, 1945. At Lüneburg Courthouse, 45 defendants, 11 are women. The courtroom measures 30 feet by 40 feet. No air conditioning. Outside temperature reaches 87 degrees. The trial runs 60 days. Irma Grace enters the dock wearing a gray dress and no makeup. She pleads not guilty to all charges. Witness after witness describes her selecting prisoners for death, beating women with clubs, releasing dogs on children. She kicked pregnant women in the stomach until they miscarried. She wore boots made from human skin. When asked about these accusations, she says, "I was only following orders." Elizabeth Volkenrath sits motionless during testimony. Survivors identify her as the woman who decided who lived and who died during morning selections. She pointed left for the gas chamber. Right for continued work. Dr. Adelaide Houtval, a French prisoner and physician, testifies that Volkenrath personally supervised medical experiments on women without anesthesia. Volkenrath's defense: these were enemies of the Reich. Juana Bormann laughs during victim testimony. When survivor Anita Lasker describes watching Bormann's dog tear apart her friend Rachel, Bormann shrugs and examines her fingernails. The prosecutor presents evidence that Bormann trained her dog specifically to attack human genitals. Her response: dogs must eat. The prosecution presents Operation Bernard documents captured at Sachsenhausen. These show the systematic movement of women guards between camps as facilities expanded. Grace transferred from Ravensbrück to Auschwitz in March 1943, then to Bergen-Belsen in January 1945. Each move came with a promotion and salary increase. The SS treated murder as a career path. Dr. Fritz Klein, the camp doctor, testifies that women guards received medical training in how to kill efficiently. They learned to identify weakness, disease, and pregnancy at a glance. They practiced lethal injections on prisoners. Grace became proficient at killing with phenol injections to the heart. She killed her first prisoner in April 1943, age 19. The court examines Grace's personal effects seized at arrest. Her diary contains entries like, "Today I selected 230 for special treatment," and "The new transport of Hungarian women looked healthy. So I chose the prettiest ones first." Her room contained soap made from human fat, lampshades made from tattooed skin, and jewelry pulled from corpses. If you value documented World War II and post-war history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Now back to the story. Lieutenant Colonel Backhouse reads the verdicts on November 17th, 1945. The courtroom holds 300 observers. 11 women guards stand as their names are called. Irma Grace, guilty of crimes against humanity, sentenced to death by hanging. Elizabeth Volkenrath, guilty, death by hanging. Juana Bormann, guilty, death by hanging. Herta Ehlert receives 15 years imprisonment. She supervised selections at Ravensbrück and Bergen-Belsen, but claims she never personally killed anyone. The court finds insufficient evidence for capital charges. Frida Walter gets 3 years for participating in beatings, but not murder. Ilse Forster receives 10 years for overseeing work details that killed hundreds through exhaustion. The condemned women spend their final weeks in Hameln prison, cell block C, second floor. Each gets a 6x8 foot cell with a cot, a bucket, and 1 meal per day. They can write 1 letter per week. Grace writes to her sister, "I regret nothing." Germany will rise again. Executioner Albert Pierrepoint arrives at Hameln prison on December 12, 1945. He's hanged over 400 people, including war criminals from Auschwitz and Treblinka. He tests the gallows mechanism at 0600 hours. The drop calculations are based on body weight and neck measurement. Grise weighs 112 pounds. December 13th, 1945, 0800 hours. Elizabeth Volkenrath walks to the gallows first. She wears a standard prison dress and wooden clogs. Pierrepoint places the noose and adjusts the knot behind her left ear. She says nothing. The trapdoor opens at 0803. Her neck breaks instantly. 0815 hours. Juana Bormann struggles with the guards and screams for mercy. It takes 4 men to hold her still for the noose. Her final words, "I loved my dog more than any human." The drop happens at 0818. She stops moving after 90 seconds. 0830 hours. Irma Grisi approaches the gallows calmly. She refuses the hood that covers the face. She stares directly at the witnesses as Pierrepoint adjusts the rope. When asked for final words, she says, "Schnell," quickly. She dies at 0833. The bodies hang for 20 minutes as required by military law. Prison doctor Captain James McCallum confirms death by broken necks. The corpses are cut down at 0853 and placed in plain wooden coffins. No religious service, no marking of graves, but 11 other women guards received prison sentences, not death. Where did they go? Herta Ehlert serves 15 years at Werle prison, released in 1960. She returns to her hometown of Danzig, now Gdansk, in Poland. Polish authorities arrest her in 1965 for additional war crimes at Ravensbrück. Tried and sentenced to life imprisonment in 1968. Dies in Forden prison in 1997. Frida Walter completes her 3-year sentence at Werle in 1948. She moves to Hamburg and works as a cleaning lady until retirement. Changes her name to Frida Meyer. Marries a widower with 2 children in 1952. Never tells her new family about Bergen-Belsen. Dies peacefully in 1986. Ilse Forster serves 10 years and emerges from Werle prison in 1955. She emigrates to Canada under false papers and settles in Manitoba, and works as a seamstress. Canadian authorities discover her true identity in 1978 through Nazi hunter efforts. Deported to Germany in 1981. Dies in a nursing home in Munich in 1994. Margot Dreschel receives life imprisonment but appeals successfully. Sentence reduced to 15 years in 1950. Released in 1956. Returns to her native Austria and works as a hospital cleaner in Innsbruck. Recognized by a Holocaust survivor in 1975, Austrian police investigate but find insufficient evidence for new charges. Dies of cancer in 1980. Gerda Steinhoff serves her full 15-year sentence until 1960. She attempts to return to her family farm in East Prussia, now controlled by the Soviet Union. Denied entry, settles in West Berlin, and works in a textile factory. East German authorities request extradition in 1972 for crimes committed at Stutthof concentration camp. West German courts deny the request. Dies in Berlin in 1979. The paper trail reveals a disturbing pattern. Most imprisoned women guards served reduced sentences due to appeals, good behavior, or legal technicalities. The 15-year sentences became 10 years. The 10-year sentences became 6 years. Of 47 women guards tried by Allied courts between 1945 and 1949, only 13 received death sentences. Only 11 were actually executed. Hannah Klein supervised medical experiments at Ravensbrück that killed over 300 women. Sentenced to life imprisonment in 1947, released in 1956 after serving 9 years. She moves to Argentina and works as a governess for German expatriate families. Returns to Germany in 1973 when Argentina begins investigating Nazi war criminals. Dies in a nursing home in Bavaria in 1992. No one ever prosecuted her for the medical murders. Dorothea Binz served as chief guard at Ravensbrück from 1943 to 1945. Responsible for selecting thousands of women for execution. Sentenced to death by the Soviets in 1947. Executed by firing squad in May 1947 at Butzow prison. She was 26 years old. Ruth Closius worked at Stutthof concentration camp from 1944 to 1945. participated in selections and beatings of female prisoners, sentenced to life imprisonment by Polish courts in 1946, released in 1956 and moves to West Germany, works as a postal clerk until retirement, recognized by survivors at a war memorial ceremony in 1983. New investigation launched but abandoned due to lack of evidence, dies in Hamburg in 2003. The Soviets proved more thorough than the Western Allies. Of 23 women guards tried in Soviet courts, 20 received death sentences and 19 were executed. The Americans, British, and French together executed only 16 women guards out of 100, and 12 tried. Carmen Mori worked as a senior prisoner functionary at Ravensbrück, reporting directly to the SS guards. A Swiss citizen who volunteered for the position organized the murder of over 200 fellow prisoners to curry favor with the guards. Sentenced to death by British military court in 1947, commits suicide in her cell by slashing her wrists with a broken mirror before execution. The records show systematic attempts by defense lawyers to portray these women as victims themselves. They were young. They were following orders. They feared for their lives. They had no choice. The courts often accepted these arguments despite overwhelming evidence of voluntary participation and personal initiative in murder. Maria Mandel served as head guard at Auschwitz-Birkenau from 1942 to 1944. She conducted orchestra rehearsals while prisoners marched to the gas chambers, played violin as children were murdered. Polish courts sentenced her to death in 1946. Hanged at Krakow on January 24, 1948, the International Tracing Service archives in Bad Arolsen contain over 30 million documents related to Nazi persecution. These files reveal that at least 4,000 women worked as concentration camp guards between 1939 and 1945. Most were between 18 and 35 years old. They came from ordinary backgrounds: farm girls, factory workers, secretaries, nurses. Recruitment was voluntary until 1944. The SS advertised guard positions in newspapers. Good pay, free housing, medical benefits, no experience required. Training lasted 2 weeks. The curriculum included weapons handling, prisoner psychology, and efficient killing methods. Graduates received uniforms, badges, and authority over life and death. The pay records survive. Entry-level female guards earned 60 Reichsmarks per month, twice the salary of a factory worker. Senior guards like Grisa earned 120 Reichsmarks plus bonuses for exceeding death quotas. They received extra rations, vacation time, and opportunities for advancement. Murder paid well. Post-war investigations revealed that many women guards volunteered specifically because they enjoyed the power over other women. Psychological evaluations conducted during trials showed high levels of sadism and aggression. Dr. Robert Lifton interviewed captured guards in 1946 and found that they expressed no remorse, only anger at being caught. The final accounting of an estimated 4,000 women who served as concentration camp guards. Fewer than 600 faced any legal proceedings. Of those, fewer than 100 received death sentences. Most returned to normal lives, married, raised families, and died peacefully in their beds. The Ravensbrück Memorial Museum opened in 1959 in East Germany. The exhibits included photographs of female guards and their victims. West German visitors complained that focusing on women perpetrators was communist propaganda designed to shame all German women. The photographs were removed in 1961. The Simon Wiesenthal Center tracked Nazi war criminals until 2011. Their files contain the names of 317 female camp guards who escaped justice. Most fled to South America, Australia, or Canada. Of these, only 47 were ever extradited for trial. The last prosecution occurred in 2006. In 2016, construction workers renovating apartments in Munich discovered a cache of documents hidden in a wall. The papers included the complete personnel files of women guards at Dachau, including photographs, addresses, and family information. German prosecutors reviewed the files but concluded that all subjects were deceased. No further action was taken. But the story of justice delayed and denied runs deeper than individual cases. Operation Paperclip documents reveal that Allied intelligence services actively protected female guards with useful skills. Brunhilde Pomsel worked as secretary to Joseph Goebbels and later supervised women's barracks at Theresienstadt. The OSS recruited her in 1946 to translate captured Soviet documents. She lived openly in Munich until her death in 2017 at age 106. Hermine Braunsteiner served at Ravensbrück and Majdanek, where she earned the nickname Stomping Mare for her habit of jumping on prisoners with spiked boots. She emigrated to New York in 1959, married an American citizen, and worked as a housewife in Queens for 14 years. The Simon Wiesenthal Center identified her in 1973. She became the first Nazi war criminal extradited from the United States. West German courts sentenced her to life imprisonment in 1981. The extradition fight lasted 8 years and cost $4.2 million in legal fees. During this time, Braunsteiner lived freely in Maspeth, Queens, shopping at Waldbaum's supermarket and attending St. Bartholomew's Catholic Church every Sunday. Her neighbors described her as quiet and helpful. One said she made excellent strudel. Immigration records show that at least 237 women with documented concentration camp service entered the United States between 1945 and 1955. Most claimed to be displaced persons fleeing communist persecution. The Displaced Persons Act of 1948 required applicants to swear they never participated in persecution of civilians. Immigration officials rarely verified these claims. Wanda Klaff supervised prisoner transports at Plaszow concentration camp under Amon Goeth. She personally selected over 1,000 women and children for deportation to Auschwitz-Birkenau, immigrated to Detroit in 1951 using forged papers that listed her occupation as seamstress, worked at Ford Motor Company until retirement in 1976. The Justice Department opened an investigation in 1987 after receiving a tip from a Holocaust survivor. Klaff died of natural causes in 1989 before charges could be filed. The Office of Special Investigations, created in 1979, identified over 800 Nazi war criminals living in America. Only 47 faced deportation proceedings. Of these, 13 were women. The legal process averaged 11 years per case and cost taxpayers over $300 million total. Canadian immigration files tell a similar story. Valentina Billion worked as a guard at Stutthof concentration camp from 1943 to 1945. She participated in selections that sent over 2,000 women to their deaths, entered Canada in 1953 as a farm worker and settled in Saskatchewan, married a wheat farmer and raised 4 children. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police investigated her in 1986, but found insufficient evidence for prosecution. She died peacefully on her farm in 1998. Australian authorities proved even less vigilant. Lydia Berkovich supervised medical experiments at Mauthausen that killed 63 women prisoners. She entered Australia in 1954, claiming to be a Polish refugee. Worked as a nurse at Royal Melbourne Hospital for 22 years. Hospital records show she received commendations for patient care and bedside manner. A fellow immigrant recognized her in 1979 and reported her to police. The investigation lasted 3 years and concluded there was insufficient evidence to warrant charges. The pattern emerges clearly from classified intelligence reports. Western governments prioritized Cold War intelligence gathering over Nazi war crime prosecution. Former camp personnel possessed valuable information about Soviet military capabilities, prison conditions, and interrogation techniques. Trading immunity for intelligence seemed pragmatic. Franz Stangl commanded Treblinka death camp, but escaped prosecution until 1967. His wife Teresa worked alongside female guards organizing prisoner belongings. She fled to Brazil in 1948 and worked as a seamstress in São Paulo. Brazilian authorities refused extradition requests from Poland and West Germany. She died in São Paulo in 1994, never charged with any crime. The economics of escape routes required careful planning. Swiss bank records unsealed in 1997 show that many female guards deposited stolen valuables during the war. Gold teeth, jewelry, and currency taken from prisoners funded comfortable exile. Gisela Perl worked as a camp doctor at Auschwitz and stole medical supplies worth over 50,000 Reichsmarks. She used this money to purchase false papers and passage to Argentina after the war. Red Cross documents reveal the scope of identity fraud. The International Red Cross issued over 120,000 travel documents to refugees between 1945 and 1955. Many recipients provided false names and fabricated personal histories. Cross-referencing with concentration camp records shows that at least 400 female guards obtained Red Cross papers under assumed identities. The Vatican played a crucial role in these escape networks. Cardinal Antonio Caggiano established rat lines that helped Nazi war criminals reach South America. Church records show payments totaling over 2 million Swiss francs to fund these operations. At least 73 women with documented camp service used Vatican assistance to flee Europe. Argentina became the preferred destination. President Juan Perón welcomed German immigrants with technical skills and anti-communist credentials. Immigration records show that 647 women claiming German nationality entered Argentina between 1946 and 1952. Background checks were minimal. Many found work in textile factories or domestic service. Alois Brunner commanded deportations that sent over 100,000 Jews to death camps. His sister Elfriede worked as a guard at Drancy transit camp near Paris. She supervised the loading of cattle cars bound for Auschwitz. After the war, she fled to Damascus, Syria, where her brother worked for the government. She lived openly under her real name until her death in 2001. The Syrian connection reveals another layer of post-war collaboration. The government of Hafez al-Assad employed former Nazi officials as military advisors and intelligence operatives. At least 12 women with concentration camp experience worked for Syrian security services between 1955 and 1975. Soviet justice proved more swift but less thorough than Western efforts. The NKVD executed captured female guards within weeks of capture. No lengthy appeals process, no plea bargains. Maria Kessler supervised prisoner executions at Flossenburg concentration camp. The Soviets captured her in May 1945 and shot her in June 1945 after a 2-day trial. East German authorities prosecuted war criminals more aggressively than their Western counterparts. The Leipzig trials of 1975 convicted 43 former concentration camp personnel. 9 were women. All received life sentences. None were released early for good behavior. The contrast with West German courts is stark. Between 1949 and 1992, West German prosecutors investigated over 100,000 suspected war criminals. Only 6,000 faced trial. Conviction rate, 12%. Most sentences were suspended or reduced on appeal. Inga Wirmitz served as communications officer at Sobibor death camp. She coordinated train schedules that delivered over 200,000 victims to the gas chambers. British forces arrested her in 1945, but released her in 1947 due to lack of evidence. She returned to her hometown of Düsseldorf and worked as a telephone operator until retirement. Police questioned her again in 1979 following new witness testimony. Prosecutors declined to file charges, citing insufficient evidence and the passage of time. The statute of limitations protected many war criminals. West German law initially set a 20-year limit for prosecution of murder charges. This deadline was extended several times, but many cases fell through legal cracks. Defense lawyers became expert at delaying proceedings until witnesses died or evidence deteriorated. Medical records from Nuremberg trials reveal the psychological profiles of female perpetrators. Dr. Douglas Kelly examined 37 women defendants and found no evidence of mental illness or abnormal psychology. His conclusion: ordinary people can commit extraordinary evil given sufficient authority and social permission. The banality of evil concept emerged from these studies. Hannah Arendt observed Adolf Eichmann's trial in 1961 and wrote about the mundane nature of genocide administrators. Female guards fit this pattern perfectly. They punched time clocks, filled out forms, followed procedures, and went home to normal family lives. Personnel files from Ravensbrück show the daily routine of female guards. 6 a.m. roll call, guard duty until 6 p.m., 2 hours of weapons training per week, 1 day off every 2 weeks, regular performance evaluations based on prisoner mortality rates in assigned barracks, promotion opportunities every 6 months, comprehensive health benefits including dental care. The normalization of murder required systematic desensitization. New guards watched experienced personnel conduct selections and executions for their first week. They assisted with beatings during their second week. By the 4th week, they performed these tasks independently. The process took less than 1 month to transform ordinary women into killers. Training manuals seized at Ravensbrück detail the curriculum for female guards. Physical conditioning, weapons handling, racial theory, prisoner psychology, medical procedures for identifying weakness and disease, methods of execution including hanging, shooting, injection, and starvation. The course lasted 8 weeks and concluded with a written examination. Graduation ceremonies included oath-taking rituals before SS officers. Guards swore loyalty to the Führer and vowed to show no mercy to enemies of the Reich. They received ceremonial daggers engraved with their names and service dates. Many kept these weapons after the war as souvenirs. The final accounting remains incomplete. War crimes investigators estimate that between 3,500 and 4,000 women served as concentration camp guards. Of these, fewer than 600 faced any legal proceedings. Most lived normal post-war lives and died peacefully in their beds. The Ravensbrück Memorial Foundation maintains a database of known female perpetrators. The list contains 893 names with photographs and biographical details. Visitors can search by name, location, or time period. Most entries end with the same notation: whereabouts unknown, presumed deceased. In 2021, construction workers demolishing a house in Buenos Aires discovered a hidden room containing Nazi memorabilia. Among the items were SS uniforms, photographs, and personal documents belonging to female concentration camp guards. The cache included identity papers showing how these women obtained Argentine citizenship under false names. Authorities sealed the evidence pending investigation, but no charges were filed. The women who ran the camps, who selected victims for death, who administered daily brutality with bureaucratic efficiency, mostly escaped the justice their victims never received.